Welcome to the Future of Tourism podcast. I'm David Peacock. We're talking about conservation.
If you are not credible, you never actually will be influential.
Bring everyone to the table
and imagine their world anew.
We often speak about alignment as if it's achieved in the boardroom. The strategy is approved, the plan published, and we declare success. But that's only half the equation. If that strategy does not translate into the daily reality of a place, if it doesn't manifest in the behavior of tourism stakeholders, it remains theoretical. It doesn't reach the visitor or the resident, missing the opportunity to complete a virtuous cycle where alignment drives engagement, and engagement in turn strengthens alignment. Schupp, Senior Manager of Destination Experience at Visit Seattle, takes a concierge approach to addressing that challenge. Literally, he brings strategy to the front line through a concierge's lens. Through initiatives like the Certified Tourism Ambassador Program and his concierge network leadership work, strategy becomes capability. This episode is about that translation, from boardroom to bus stop. Good morning, Rudd. How are you? Where are you? What's it like?
Morning, David. Life is good. I'm sitting here in Visit Seattle enjoying that spring day, which I think we're going to hit 57 degrees today, so it's a joy. Life is good in the Pacific Northwest. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to see you. It snowed here this morning. We're having last vestiges on the east coast of winter as it fights its way.
It's those little signs, even if there's snow on the crocus, they're under there.
There it is. Hey, when I did the intro, I talked about you bringing a concierge approach to this. And when I said literally, I meant literally. You are steeped in a tradition of concierge work. You come to Visit Seattle after that work. Just for everyone listening, give us a little bit of a lens on that journey. How do you come to be the visitor services at Seattle from a concierge point?
I came to the table a little late in life in the hospitality world, in that I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, and had the opportunity to go to work at a wonderful boutique resort called Sanctuary Resort on Camelback Mountain. And while I was not at the concierge desk there, I did have a position where we were at the bell desk, and they were the first point of contact on the driveway with anyone setting foot on the property, whether it was for the renowned restaurant that was there, or they were checking in, or just for an event. And that was very exciting and very empowering to know that the opportunity to welcome someone onto that property was going to be able to set the tone for their visit. And then also in reverse, knowing that we were going to be the last people that they saw prior to getting in their car and going, and having the opportunity to touch base and see how their experience was. Was there the high points that we had anticipated there would be, or was there a way that we could have massaged the experience to make it next level? So I spent 7 years there, and it was a wonderful, wonderful training ground. We were fortunate enough to have won the Condé Nast small luxury property on the continent during that period. So that's when my antenna went up and said, I need to pay attention. This is good.
Okay, but it's a really circuitous route. This is a weird one. But you end up in Seattle because of baseball.
Exactly. Well,
tell me about that.
We were fortunate enough, the resort at that time was owned by the Castellini family, who happened to be the owners of the Cincinnati Reds, which was my hometown team growing up. Even though I was 90 miles away in Louisville, Kentucky, that was where my baseball education was rooted in the Big Red Machine and Pete Rose and Johnny Bench and that whole thing. So to have the serendipitous destiny trail take me to a resort that was owned by the owners of the Reds. Um, we started hosting the winter meetings for Major League Baseball and the owners and the general managers and whatnot. And during that period in time, I was fortunate enough to meet a fellow Louisvillian who had moved to Seattle and was then president of the Seattle Mariners. Um, Fast forward, I moved to Seattle. I took a position with one of the regional hotel chains in Seattle and worked right across from the stadium, which again, fortuitous because I also went to work for the Seattle Mariners as a concierge in their terrace club. Hence, having one foot in event venue concierge work, but then also across the street as a concierge in a local regional business travelers hotel. And that was a wonderful, wonderful introduction to Seattle because I was surrounded by people that were extolling the virtues of the city, whether it was through the Mariners, and I'll admit my introduction to American League Baseball. So that was really cool as well. And I also became embedded in the concierge community in the hospitality world by joining the Seattle Hotel Concierge Association as a board member and the Concierge Guild of Seattle as well, which I went on to lead that organization for a few years as well. So
There's the headline. The concierge is concierge. You actually are or were the head of the Concierge Association.
Yes, the Concierge Guild of Seattle, I was the acting president for 2 years. My term ended in January, so I have pulled back and am still a very active member and as an advisor to the board as well. In fact, this afternoon we will be having our Tourism Expo with the partners that and representation throughout the city so that we can support each other, learn what's new in the tourism industry as we're getting ready to launch into our high season.
Well, listen, I got to thank you then, because if your tourism expo's this afternoon and it's 11 o'clock there, it's really big of you to take the time to talk to
It's
us.
all good. All good.
All right. So you join Visit Seattle specifically, and they bring you in because of your concierge's lens on the opportunity. What does that look like when you start? How do you translate that? And that's what we're talking about here, is how do you translate that idea of empowerment and engagement? And you and I have talked about this in Seattle. You do talk about it being a wonderful place to live. How do you empower that?
The lens with which I think my hire took place at Visit Seattle was the opportunity to bring those micro moments that visitors have. I mean, as working for a destination marketing organization, the campaigns are pertinent and important that we launch to bring brand awareness to the destination. But then once people are here, it translates into a micro moment where you have the stories, you have the service, you have the experiences that are going to make those memorable moments. And those are the things that will occur during a visit, which will in turn encourage people to return and to go home and become disciples for our destination with the people that they encounter in their lives. So that was, I think, one of the main objectives of hiring a concierge to come and lead their visitor centers so that we were creating more of those moments as opposed to simply being wayfinding or directional.
So, and you have a different take on visitor centers too. And I do respect that so many places have so many unique and interesting and effective takes on visitor centers. I gave up my position that visitor centers were dead a decade ago because I've constantly watched them be reinvented to do that. Tell me about the visitor center at Seattle and the concierge service.
Well, we have the opportunity at the present time. We have three different locations, and they are specifically suited for where they are at. We are fortunate to have a location in Pike Place Market, which is the number one visited tourist attraction in our city that most every person that visits our city will find their way through there, whether it is business, corporate, leisure, the cruise industry
Coffee, coffee.
is here. Yeah, we have coffee, we have Dungeness crab. That's the lobster of the West Coast, that we are incredibly lucky to have here, as well as the salmon. So that is a visitor center that is so approachable to everyone and anyone, and covers the largest scope of our contribution to people's memorable
I
moments.
know when you say approachable, you don't mean it's got great Schwen Fi or feng shui. I mean,
Right.
approachable how? Tell us about the approachable. Tell us about how you
Approachable
make that.
in number one, our location is in the center of everything. We are located literally on the street, um, in the cobblestone section. And so that is going to be the point of entrance, number one. Number two, we are approachable in that the people that work there are ingratiating and looking for you to approach them. It's not going to be a heads down on a computer terminal. It is one of the locations that we do not employ digital kiosks or whatnot, because it is very much a humanistic approach to come talk to me. Let's see what we can do.
You keep numbers on that. How many people a year walk through just that location?
Just through that location, our engagements are anywhere between 60 to 75,000 a
Wow.
year.
And actual
And
one-on-ones.
yes, yes. So, we feel it's a wonderful place to make somebody feel like they have made a one-on-one connection
Hmm, hmm.
in the hustle and bustle of the oldest continually operating public market in the United States, with
Well,
over 500 vendors and artisans
and
and
you've trained these
stores.
you've trained these frontline people.
We You have no idea how special it is to have a staff that is instinctive, and because if they were not of the ilk where this was the fiber of their being, to be of service and to have conversations and look as though they are interested. And trust me, there's bound to be days that we all have where you're going, oh, is it 5 o'clock yet? But that's not allowed. We are there for them. So the staffing is everything. And
Wow.
and I honestly believe that nobody knows everything. We can teach you how to use resources and provide information. I can't teach you how to be engaged.
You're
That's
telling me you gotta want to be a concierge.
right, right, right.
Nice.
I mean, if it's not a trait that is in there, we can do things to enhance it and help you find your inner concierge. However, if that is not the fabric that you're cut from, then there's nothing more
Okay.
painful than
So
that.
that's a thrilling depiction. I think I want to come to Seattle and retire as a concierge because I love exactly that. When you go to places and you're able to share things about a place to make other people go, "Wow, I got to do that. I did not know." You know,
And
yeah,
I think one of the most important things is when someone comes up and is asking for guidance on what to do, it's not to rattle off the laundry list
right.
of our greatest hits. You have to engage and find out what is your interest? What have you heard? How can we direct you in a way that's going to be meaningful? And that in and of itself could be perhaps you're more interested in the manhole art that's going to be on the sidewalks than you are, you know,
Sure.
seeing the gray whales, whatever. But it's only through conversation that we can do that.
Okay, so that's from the boardroom to the street front. And now you also take this program well beyond that. You work with stakeholders who own businesses, you work with individuals who literally want to be tourism ambassadors. How do you work with businesses? How do you create that concierge sort of attitude with businesses? I and
Well,
I and I would tell you, I rarely see it, but one manifestation I see of it is when businesses in a destination start telling the destination story because it knows it's really good for their brand. That's the one manifestation I see. But how do you do that? How do you work on the front line with businesses? You have formalized this. This isn't done on the fly.
in relation to the other two visitor centers that we have, which are located in two buildings in our convention center campus, which tend to be um, more focused on meetings, which what can I do in 2 hours, in between these. We wanted to also find a way to empower the community and embed tourism ambassadors within the community so that they're not necessarily behind a desk that you walk up to
Mhm.
seeking just a laundry list of activities. So we have, um, over the last 2 years, worked to develop our Certified Tourism Ambassador program, which is, of course, going to be populated with some of our stakeholders. We have a program with our membership department. Visit Seattle has over 800 members that we work with
Mhm.
as well. And that is part of our packaging with them is to offer the opportunity for representatives from each of those stakeholders to come and take part in our Certified Tourism Ambassador program so that they as well can have someone with that curatorial touch in their business so that we use the greater story of Seattle through our branding and marketing to entice people again to the area. We're going to do that with people seeking values like we have here as well. And then once they are here, we encourage each of our members to share their stories, their points of view, their values as well, so that once the visitor is here, they're going a little bit deeper. It's not a campaign that they're just seeing. They're getting the actual individual story of someone embedded in the community who's, let's face it, these are people's hopes and dreams that are creating these businesses. And so we want to be able to amplify those stories, but we also want to empower them to share their own stories.
I got to see some of those stories. You and I attended the same dinner at in Scottsdale for the CTA. That program, I must say, I'm impressed with the depth of it. When I looked at the sort of history and the teaching decks for a place like Seattle, there is an encyclopedic course there on tourism, not just the what's going on and the history. All of the history is there, but all of the practices are there. You've got a few hundred CTA members now, right?
We do, and we launched publicly in July of last year. So I said that we have been working on this for 2 years. It takes quite a bit of time to develop the program and the content, and because it is not static, it is very much a living program because the city itself breathes. Our program has to breathe. And so, with that, we've had the opportunity since launching in July of last year to have a couple hundred CTAs, but then also finding ways for, I mean, let's face it, we are in the tourism industry. So, there are the obvious in the museums and the attractions and the things that one typically associates with the tourism economy and how that benefits your community. But we also have the opportunity to work with SEA, which is the airport here that the Port of Seattle runs, to empower volunteers there. We are in talks to work with a program where we will be certifying the taxi drivers that serve the both cruise port and the Port of Seattle's airport, because these are valuable people, though so many people do not necessarily label it as tourism economy. They'll think of it as transportation. That's the first impression. That's a last impression. There are moments there where they're not duplicated in any other part
Mm-hmm.
of the visit. So we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to extol the virtues of our city and ensure that people are having quality interactions.
So all destination leaders these days are looking at their places and saying, how do we integrate this idea of placemaking, of virtuous places that people want to live? How do we serve citizens? How do we make this a better place? And I know you think about those questions, and I know Tammy Blanc does too, all day, every day in Seattle. So I ask you this, as specifically as a concierge, what is it that you would say to destination leaders using the Rudd Schupp super magnifying concierge lens that we should all be doing as we move into this future where we need to align better, serve better, communicate better? What's the one thing that you constantly say, if we all just did more of this?
I think if we have the opportunity, because we all have strategic plans that we're working on, and to elevate tourism economy, but at the same time, these need to be actionable items that the frontline Joe on the street can implement it without it being just theory. So even, and this may seem so simplistic, but having a leader experience and talk to frontline, but then thank you goes a long way. You know, thank you is in embodiment of showing appreciation, also checking in, making sure that what is needed or expected is being addressed, and it's acknowledgement. People want to be seen for showing up.
For sure.
And so, that's what I would recommend to leaders is because it's essential that we have strategists that are forming the plans, but I think it's also essential that those have a translation so that all can feel like they have the opportunity to affect the outcome.
When do you think in Seattle you achieved that sort of mass? I mean, you came in early. It was a very interesting hire to put a concierge in the front of visitor experiences. You had the multiple visitor centers, all that. When did you feel like, wow, this is really taken? It's got wins.
Well, David, we also have to look at, I'm just in 1 week, I will celebrate 8 years with Visit Seattle. So when I was hired, it was a totally different beast,
Hmm. Hmm.
in the DMO world
Hmm.
and the world in general. And so that was critical in um, being able to bring the personal touch to a thriving, robust market for tourists and residents here. And it was, I don't want to use the word machine, but it was well oiled in that the momentum was there, and it was finding ways to make that momentum not feel in any way rote
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
structured, like to the point where it's not human. But then the world pushed pause, and we had a pandemic, and it totally changed the lens with which we were looking at the people in our city.
Hmm.
When you go from the global market to focusing on your drive-in, from 50 miles out, just hoping that they will come and support a farmer's market or something like that. It's as though the visitor centers were an etch-a-sketch that had been shook, and you get to start again on how are we going to make this portrait. And that is when we had the opportunity to go deeper in the micro moments
Right.
and creating the experiential connection with visitors, because there was the luxury of building from the base up.
You've spawned another question, even though we're taking through on time here, but I have to ask it then. How does the concierge's um, lens spill over into the digital experience? So much of the experience, and I know we talked about the visitor centers, but how are you part of that? Are you consulted? How does that play out?
We have that was an approach that we also embraced post-pandemic, was realizing that the things that came out of the pandemic was a lot more people are proficient with discovering their own information, whether it is through Google searches or, the abundance of online travel options and whatnot. And so finding ways, and we adapted and have kiosks that are available as well, because there is now a market of individuals, two individuals that want to be in the driver's seat, but we
Hmm.
can
Hmm.
curate what is available on
Hmm.
those digital platforms. Um, and through that, we are able to empower our members again to utilize that as an opportunity to tell their story, number one, to a different audience that maybe they had not anticipated before as having that digital aspect as part of their packaging. But then couple that with the fact that we have made it so that we have a travel platform that you can put on your phone, these sort of things. Yet our individual concierge are eager to make that approachable and work with you on
Right.
it. And
Right.
as we're curating an individualized experience, These are reference tools that we can also utilize so that when they walk away, they're not just looking at a listing on the screen, but they've had input as well on the interpretation of that digital material.
I think you're underlining the necessity of the human experience to inform as we go forward in an AI-enabled world. And it's one we wrestle with all the time. You know, you can have a human experience, you can have a digital experience, you can have a hybrid experience, and there's benefits to all of them. But I think as we start to program, you know, the AIs that will help us be concierges, you better get a brain dump out in the next 2 years if we're going to capture
Right.
what you learned along the way.
Right,
All right,
right.
we're gonna close out here. I just want to close on one thing that I think I should do because I talked to you a bit about this. I'm gonna give you just a chance to tell me why you love living in Seattle, and you do it such justice. So we'll close on that one. So I want to say thanks. You've been a great guest, but why do you love living in Seattle?
Thank you, David, for the opportunity to come on. My move to Seattle was one that when all the universe factions come together and you realize this is where I need to be. And I was on vacation here visiting some friends that lived in Seattle, and there was a pivotal election that was taking place in 2012 that introduced the concept of same-sex marriage, which was not anything new. But it was the first time it had been on a ballot. There were places that it was legalized, but that was always determined through the judicial system, saying that this was the first place in the United States that had placed that on the ballot, and it passed. And along with, at that particular time, they decided the legalization of cannabis as well. And these were two things that this was your neighbor saying, live your life. It's not for me to pass judgment. Come, be comfortable and accept it. And it has just grown exponentially in this community in that we want to see everyone have a place at the table. We want to see everyone thriving. And by creating a wonderful place to live, you're creating a wonderful place for people to visit.
Yes.
And so we can all benefit from that.
Well, I think that's beautifully said. It's been a great pleasure to have you. I do want to have some more discussions because I really do think that a lot of the human skills, like the concierge, are the hardest parts that we have to now bake into very, very capable digital systems that'll soon be doing so much more. But as you pointed out, in each of those cases, the human piece is the most important piece, and we got to focus on that.